I heard my mother call me stupid in front of the whole family. Everyone raised their glasses and shouted, "To stupid relatives with money." A month later, they organized my sister's engagement party at my country house, but I had already changed the locks. I'm late for my mother's birthday. It's 7 in the evening. I'm speeding down the highway at a speed that would definitely get me a ticket, but I have my baked goods in the trunk. A huge wild berry cake that I baked until the last minute. I held the steering wheel so tightly that my fingers turned white. I didn't want to think about being judged for being late again, especially by my mom, especially today. Typical Marine, always late, Aunt Doreen would say, rolling her eyes. Work is more important than family, is my mom's comment, and I just wanted the cake to be perfect. Is that so hard to understand? I am 35 years old and the owner of Homemade Flour, a small organic bread bakery that has grown from my kitchen to a real business with 3 employees in 5 years. Today, Leslie, my assistant, knocked over a whole tray of cupcakes for a large order. I was helping to rework everything, and that's why I'm late. As usual, I pulled up to my mom's house, a simple one-story ranch in the Portland suburb where I grew up. I parked around the corner so as not to take up space for the important guests. She carefully took out the cake and headed for the house. The porch light was off, so I walked around to the backyard, where I could hear voices and laughter. My mom always had a big group of people over: aunts, uncles, cousins, and friends. And of course, my younger sister Tessa, the family favorite. As I approached the veranda, I heard my mother's voice. She was speaking too loudly, as she always did after a couple of glasses of wine. My silly Marin, all at work. The girl is 35, and all alone. I froze behind the hydrangea bush, still holding the heavy cake. Beverly, she's doing great with her bakery, Aunt Carol's voice said. She is, of course, Mom laughed, with that tone of voice I'd hated since childhood. Do you know how much she invested in that country house? And we all vacation there as if it were family property. At least we have a place to gather, Uncle Steve's gruff voice. Raise your glasses, Mom suddenly exclaimed, to stupid relatives with money. And they all laughed. I heard glasses clinking and a joyful chorus. To stupid relatives with money. My hands were shaking. The cake swayed, and I imagined with horror how it was falling, smashing against the tiles of the path. I took a deep breath, exhaled. Slowly, I put the box on the garden bench so as not to drop it. The noise in her ears did not subside. To stupid relatives with money, my stupid Marin. I wanted to turn around and run away. But where? To come to my mother's birthday and leave without congratulating her? My family would never forgive me for that, and I have never received an apology from them as long as I can remember. I picked up the cake and forced myself to come out from behind the bush with a smile. Hi, everyone. Sorry I'm late. The faces of those present froze for a moment. Then my mom stood up, arms outstretched. Marine! Finally! We thought we'd have to cut the store-bought cake. I noticed the store-bought cake on the table, already half-eaten. Something inside me clenched, but I kept smiling. Happy birthday, Mom! I hugged her with my free arm, smelling her favorite perfume and wine. Put your masterpiece next to the other one, she nodded at the table, and pour yourself something. We've already toasted me. I set the cake box down, trying not to look anyone in the eye. Aunt Doreen immediately opened it and whistled. Wow, you've outdone yourself, niece. Too bad we're already full. I smiled and shrugged my shoulders as if it were nothing. Where's Tessa? I asked, looking around the room. She'll be right here, my mother replied. I took my wineglass, went to the edge of the veranda, and tried to calm down. How could I have been so wrong about the people I had known all my life? Had they always thought of me as the stupid relative with money? Uncle Steve came over and put his arm around me. How's business, honey? Are the breads baking? His patronizing tone cut through my ears, especially now that I knew what was behind it. Great, Uncle. I'm opening a second bakery next month. Good for you. He patted me on the back. I hope that country house of yours isn't falling into disrepair. My aunt and I were thinking of visiting in a couple of weeks. Country house. 5 bedrooms, 3 bathrooms, a private lake. 3 years of savings, and a loan I'm still paying off. Sure, uncle. The door is always open. My voice sounded steady, even though my insides were pounding. Suddenly, I heard a joyful shout. My sister Tessa, 28 years old, stunning as ever, wearing a dress that must have cost half my monthly rent for the bakery, flew onto the veranda. Everyone, I've got news! She beamed with happiness, followed by a tall man with a familiar smile. Gavin Mercer. My pulse sped up. 2 years ago, he used to come to my bakery almost every day. He would buy croissants, talk to me, and invite me for coffee. I refused. I was too busy with business. Or maybe I was just afraid. And then he stopped coming. Gavin and I are dating, Tessa announced, pointing to him as if he were a prize in a TV show. Everyone cheered with delight. Mom ran up to them, hugging them both. I stood there, frozen to the spot, staring at Gavin. He met my gaze and looked slightly embarrassed, but quickly turned away. Marin! Tessa noticed me and waved. You know Gavin, right? He told me he bought bread from your bakery. Yes. I swallowed the lump in my throat. Congratulations! I'm happy for you. Tessa ran over and hugged me tightly. Isn't he gorgeous? I'm so happy. Her sincere delight made me feel guilty for the jabs of jealousy. It was stupid. Gavin was just a client, nothing more. But then, why was he acting so strangely? Gorgeous, I agreed, and saluted him with a glass. The rest of the evening was a blur. I sat, ate, smiled, said the right words, but felt like a stranger among these people. Now I noticed everything, the way my aunts whispered when I walked away. Uncle Steve's condescending smile when I talked about business. How my mom kept interrupting me to change the subject to Tessa. To stupid relatives with money! The phrase kept coming back to me. Am I really just a wallet for them? A place to relax? A provider of free cakes? I left the party as soon as it became acceptable, excusing myself with an early start tomorrow. The truth was, I couldn't take the falsity anymore. Thanks for the cake, honey. My mom kissed my cheek goodbye. I wish you could stay. Tessa had something else she wanted to announce. Give her my regards. I forced out a smile. At home, I kicked off my shoes, poured myself a glass of wine, and plopped down on the couch. On the mantelpiece was a family photo of us, last year's Thanksgiving at my country house. Everyone was smiling, hugging each other, and I was among them, happy, naive Moraine, who thought she had bought the love of her family. I walked over to the photo, took it in my hands, and looked at the faces. Mom, Tessa, Uncle Steve, Aunts Doreen and Carol, cousins. They used my country house whenever they wanted, ate my food, drank my wine, and then laughed at me behind my back. To stupid relatives with money, I carefully put the photo back in its place, and then I turned it back to the wall. The next morning, I woke up with a heavy head and an even heavier heart. I lay there for a long time, staring at the ceiling, before I found the strength to get up. The words I heard yesterday were still ringing in my ears. To stupid relatives with money. I tried to remember when exactly I became a person who could be used so easily. It must have started in childhood. Being Beverly Phelps's eldest daughter meant being responsible for everything, even when I was only 7 years old and Tessie was barely 2. Marin, keep an eye on your sister, my mother would always say, not even looking back as she hurried off to another meeting with her friends. And I did. I fed Tessa, read her stories, braided her hair, and checked her homework when she went to school. Not surprisingly, when my parents came home, they saw a polite Marine who had done everything right. It was expected. And a radiant Tessa who captured their attention with her antics. Look what she drew! Talent. Dad could spend hours admiring Tessa's scribbles, while my perfect A's at school seemed to be a matter of course. I got out of bed and headed to the kitchen to make coffee. The bakery was closed today, my only day off for the week. But the thought of work was on my mind. There was so much to do. Orders, invoices, employee schedules. That's how I lived my life. Work, responsibilities, more work. When it came time to go to college, I didn't dare ask my parents for money. Although my father had a stable job at an insurance company, he always complained about finances, especially after my mother had updated the interior of their house several times. Find a scholarship, my father advised me when I cautiously broached the subject. And I did. A partial scholarship. I had to cover the rest on my own. I worked as a waitress, looked after children, and worked part-time in the library. Sometimes I slept no more than 4 hours to keep up with my studies and work. 3 years later, when Tessa was graduating from high school, the situation looked completely different. "We've put money aside for your education, sweetheart," my mother said at a graduation dinner for Tessa. I almost choked on my salad. "We have money saved." "How?" "That's great." I forced a smile. "Tessa deserves the best." "She does," my mom beamed. "Our sweetheart should get everything. Tessa chose a prestigious college with tuition that cost as much as a good car every year. Her parents paid for everything: tuition, dormitory, and additional expenses. While I worked 3 jobs to pay for the last semester of my more modest institution, Tessa sent photos of frat parties and beach vacations. I didn't envy my sister. At least, I tried not to. But something hurt inside me, not because of money or privilege, but because of the uneven distribution of my parents' love. It was painful to realize that Tessa was getting not only the financial, but also the emotional support I so desperately needed. When I graduated from college, I barely had enough money for a tiny apartment in a not-so-great neighborhood in Portland. Instead of the business career I had dreamed of, I was back to waitressing, trying to save up for something. And then something happened that changed everything. My neighbor, an elderly baker named Owen, whom I sometimes helped with shopping, fell ill. For a couple of weeks, I took care of him, cooked for him, and bought his medicine. As a thank you, he taught me how to bake real bread, not the kind they sell in supermarkets, but artisanal, sourdough, organic flour. "You have a gift, girl," he said, watching me take my first perfect loaf out of the oven. Baking bread was magical. For the first time in my life, I found something that belonged only to me. Not a duty, not a responsibility to anyone, but simply the joy of creation. When Owen died, he left me his recipes and an old professional oven. "Keep it up," he wrote in a short note. And so I did. I started with a few loaves a week, which I sold to the neighbors. Then the neighbors' friends started ordering. 6 months later, I couldn't handle the orders in my tiny kitchen anymore. Domashne Baroshno was born out of this chaos, a small bakery that I opened by taking out a loan at crazy interest rates, because no bank wanted to invest in an inexperienced 25-year-old. The first year was hell. I worked 17 hours a day, 7 days a week. I baked by myself, sold by myself, cleaned by myself, kept the books by myself. And then a miracle happened. A popular local blogger wrote about homemade flour. A week later, there was a line at my door. A month later, I hired my first employee. A year later, I moved to a bigger place. All this time, my family was watching from a distance. It's not that they didn't support me, they just didn't understand. Bread? Seriously? My mother grimaced when I invited them to the opening of the new bakery. "With your education, you could have found a normal job." "This is a normal job, Mom, my own business." Of course," she waved it off. "When you get tired of playing around, you can always go to work for your father's company. But I'm not tired of playing." Every year, Domashna Barochno grew. I started earning more than I had ever dreamed of. And then a strange thing happened. My family suddenly became interested in my life. At first, it was nothing. My mom called to ask if I could order a special cake for her friend's birthday. For free, of course. Dad would mention his health insurance bills, which had gone up. Tessa asked for a small loan for a new laptop for her studies, and I gave it to her. God, I gave so much. Cakes, money, time, attention. Isn't that what I've always wanted? For my family to notice me? For my mom to call me on her own, not just after I called? To make my dad proud of me, not just Tessa. When I turned 30, I made the biggest purchase of my life, a country house in the country. 5 bedrooms, a private lake, a 2-acre plot. It was not just a house, it was a dream. A place where I finally felt like the boss of my life. I invited my family to a housewarming party. For the first time in many years, I saw something like respect in their eyes. "How did you do it?" my mother asked, looking around the spacious living room with a fireplace. I shrugged my shoulders. "I worked, I saved money, took out a loan." "Unbelievable!" She shook her head, but there was no admiration in her voice, more like surprise, as if she still couldn't believe that her uninterested eldest daughter was capable of something like this. Since then, my country house has become a center of family gatherings. Thanksgiving, Christmas, birthdays, everything happened there. I didn't mind. I liked to see the house come to life, filled with voices. But gradually, something changed. My mom no longer asked if she could celebrate at my place. She just told me the date. Tessa invited her friends over without telling me. Uncle Steve and Aunt Doreen started coming over for the weekend whenever they wanted, using the spare key I gave them just in case. "We were at your lake," Uncle Steve said on the phone one day. I stood there with the phone, feeling a strange feeling growing in my chest. I couldn't name it at the time. Now I know it was indignation. But I didn't say anything. I restocked the supplies, replaced the towels they had soiled, cleaned the grill they had left uncleaned. Because that's what Maureen does. She takes care of everyone. Lately, I've been paying my parents' bills more and more often. Dad was referring to his pension, which turned out to be less than he expected. Mom complained about the prices, and Tessa, despite the excellent education her parents had paid for, could not find a job that would fit her. "I'm a creative person," she explained, taking another loan. "I can't work in a corporation. It kills my soul." And I, of course, understood. I always understood. After my mother's birthday, I couldn't stop thinking about what I had heard. These thoughts haunted me for a week, at the bakery, at home, even in my sleep. Does my family really think I'm stupid? Or am I being overly dramatic? Maybe it was just a bad joke. I went over in my head all the times I gave them money, when I let them use my house, when I baked cakes for them in the middle of the night. Not once did I hear sincere gratitude. Not once. On Thursday, exactly a week after my mother's birthday, when I was closing the bakery, my phone lit up with a message. It was from my mother. "Marin, we have great news. Tessa and Gavin got engaged. She showed me her ring last night. You should have seen it. The diamond is huge. We are planning an engagement party at your country house in a month, on the second Saturday. We're expecting about 50 guests. Do you mind? Of course, we understand that you are busy with your bakery, so we will organize everything ourselves. Just make sure the house is ready. And yes, Tessa wants you to bake that special lavender cake of yours. Thank you in advance." I read the message 3 times. 50 guests, in my house. No question of whether I'm up for it, no options. And suddenly it hit me. They don't just think I'm stupid. They know I'll never say no. I have never set boundaries. I have never said no. I created this situation myself. Years of excessive generosity, desperately trying to buy what should have been unconditional. Family love. I sat down on the chair, feeling something new, something unfamiliar growing in my chest. Not guilt, not a desire to please. Something else. Anger. Pure, burning anger. The Forgotten Pages bookstore was hidden in a narrow street in the old town, sandwiched between an antique shop and a coffee shop. I came here whenever I needed some peace and quiet. And it was also where Rachel Winslow worked, perhaps the only person I could call a true friend. "You look like shit." Rachel put a cup of tea in front of me as I settled into a comfortable chair in the corner of the shop. "What happened?" Rachel was blunt to the point of pain. That's what I liked about her. No small talk, no embellishment of reality, nothing special. "I just found out that my family thinks I'm a fool with money." Rachel sat down across from me, tossing back her long red hair. "Tell me," she said. And I did. Everything. From the overheard toast to the engagement announcement. With every word, it was as if I was shedding a weight I had been carrying for years. You know what's worse? I finished. I'm not even surprised. Deep down, I always knew they were using me. I just didn't want to admit it. Rachel was silent for a long time, twirling her cup in her hands. Maureen, tell me honestly, she finally said. Have you ever said no to your family in your life? I tried to remember. I really tried. I must have said no to something small, but in important things. You always said yes, Rachel finished for me. You always gave money, time, emotional support. But it's normal to help your family. I felt my chest tighten. To help, yes. Letting them wipe their feet on you, no. Rachel leaned closer. Listen, I know a good specialist. Diane Frost, a psychotherapist. She helped me when I was going through a divorce. Maybe you should talk to her. I'm not sure. I started, but Rachel interrupted. Marin, you're a baker. If something broke in your oven, you'd call a repairman, right? So why don't you want to help yourself deal with your emotional state? She was right, as always. 3 days later, I was sitting in the cozy office of Diane Frost, a woman in her 50s with a short haircut and kind eyes. Tell me what brought you here, she asked after introducing herself. And I told her my story again. About my mom, who always favored Tess. About the years of trying to earn their love. How long have you felt used? Diana asked when I finished. Probably always, I admitted, but only now I allowed myself to admit it. Why now? I wondered. Maybe because of that toast. It was so frank, unvarnished. It was as if they didn't even try to hide their true opinion of me. Maybe it's not the toast, but you, Diane said softly. Maybe you're finally ready to see the truth that you've been ignoring. I nodded, feeling tears welling up in my eyes. What should I do? Start setting boundaries, she replied. Healthy relationships are based on mutual respect, not one-sided sacrifice. But first, you need to talk to your mom. Tell her what you heard and how it affected you. I shuddered at the thought of such a conversation. She'll deny it, but you have to try, for your own sake. When I came back to reality, I found my phone full of messages. From my mom, from Tessa, even from Aunt Doreen. All about the engagement. Maureen, we decided that the theme will be Parisian Spring. Can you organize the flowers? Something French. And your Tessa wants the menu to be gourmet. Sis! I'm so excited. By the way, do you remember that gazebo by the lake? Gavin and I are thinking of decorating it for the ceremony. We'll need to update it a little bit. Paint it, maybe add some lanterns. Niece, Uncle Steve and I will be here a day early to help with the preparations. Make sure the bedroom on the second floor is ready. The one with the lake view. No, please. No, if you don't mind. Nothing. I didn't reply to any of the messages. Instead, I opened my mom's message and replied, Mom, we need to talk. Can we meet tomorrow for lunch? At Margarita's at 1 o'clock. Her mom replied almost instantly, Okay, but no longer than an hour. I have an appointment with a florist for an engagement party. Talking to Diana, I imagined different versions of this conversation. My mom would admit her mistake. She apologizes for it. We cry, hug, and everything gets better. The reality was completely different. The Margarita restaurant was half empty when I arrived. My mother was already waiting, looking through the menu as if she were about to be executed, not having lunch with her daughter. Maureen, she smiled slightly when I sat down across from her. You look tired. Have you been working a lot? As always, I tried to smile. Thanks for coming. The waitress took our order, and as soon as she left, my mom got down to business. So what did you want to talk about? Something about the house? Because Tessa is worried that you're not answering her texts. I took a deep breath, remembering Diane's advice. Calm, focused, honest. Mom, last week at your birthday party, I came earlier than you thought. And I heard your toast. What toast? To stupid relatives with money. My heart was pounding, but my voice remained steady. My mom froze for a moment, then laughed. but somehow nervously. Oh, Marin, it was just a joke. Did you really take offense at a stupid joke? Mom, you called me stupid. And everyone raised their glasses. It was painful. Her face hardened. You've always been too sensitive. You can't even make a joke in your own home. Mom, I tried to stay calm. It's not a joke when you laugh at someone, not with someone. I feel like you're using me. Using you? Her voice rose. After all we've done for you? And what exactly have you done, Mom? I asked quietly. We gave you an education. I paid for my own education. And I've been working since I was 16. Yes. And who put a roof over your head before that? Who fed you? Who took you to school? I realized it was hopeless. In her world, performing basic parental duties was a huge favor for which I would be paying forever. Okay, I said, changing tactics. Then let's talk about getting engaged. I think you should look elsewhere. The fork clattered to the table. What? I don't want the engagement to take place in my house. Are you kidding? Her face turned red. It's already planned. The invitations have been sent out. Without my consent, Mom. You didn't even ask me if I'd be willing to host 50 people. It's your sister. Can't you be happy for her? I am happy for Tessa, but my house is not a public space. It's my property, bought with my money. My mother looked at me as if I had just announced that I was planning to join a cult. What happened to you, Marin? You used to be so kind and generous. And now, she shook her head. Do you know what I think? You're jealous of your sister. Because she found love, and you didn't. This blow was below the belt. I felt something snap inside me. This has nothing to do with envy, Mom. It has to do with respect. And about my family laughing at me behind my back, calling me stupid with money. You're twisting this, my mom cut me off. If it's so hard for you to help your sister on the happiest day of her life, then maybe we were really wrong about you. What does that mean? That you're not as good as we thought. I looked at her in disbelief. This was a classic example of what Diana was talking about, emotional manipulation, making me feel guilty for finally setting healthy boundaries. Maybe you're right. I put the napkin down. Maybe I'm not that good. At least I won't let myself be used anymore. So you're seriously refusing to let us in the house? Mom looked like I had just hit her. Yes. Find somewhere else. You're breaking your sister's heart. I'm sorry you feel that way. The rest of the lunch passed in tense silence. When we were done, Mom stood up without even waiting for the bill. I'll tell Tess that you said no. I hope you're satisfied. And she walked away, leaving me alone with half-eaten pasta and a feeling like I'd been run over by a truck. When I got back to the bakery, Leslie looked at me in surprise. Are you okay, boss? You look pale. I'm fine, I lied. The rest of the day, I worked automatically, trying not to think about the conversation with my mom. Not to think about how she had twisted everything to make me look like a selfish person who didn't want to help her sister. Not to think about the fact that she didn't hear a single word I said. In the evening, I told Diana about our conversation. You've taken an important step, she said. Setting boundaries is never easy, especially with people who are used to breaking them. But I feel terrible, I admitted. For the sake of peace in the family? And what will you get in return? Diana asked. Gratitude? Respect? Or just more demands? I knew the answer, and I didn't like it. That evening, I received a message from Tessa. I didn't dare to open it for a long time, afraid to find anger and accusations. But when I finally read it, I froze with the phone in my hand. Hey, sis! Mom said you're worried about your engagement. Don't worry about it. We'll organize everything ourselves. By the way, I've invited the decorator to see the house tomorrow. He wants to drill some holes in the living room walls for hanging installations. It's nothing serious. We're also thinking of repainting your dining room pale pink to match the theme. You don't mind, do you? Kisses. Drill holes. In my walls. Repaint the dining room. I read the message 3 times, not believing my eyes. Did Tessa really think I would let someone drill holes in my house? After I had clearly told my mom that I did not want the engagement to take place there, it was beyond all understanding. They just ignored my no as if it didn't exist. As if I didn't exist except as a source of convenience for them. I put the phone down without answering. Instead, I opened my laptop and started searching. First, companies that install locks, then, security systems. I also wrote down the contacts of a company that replaces gate keys. I already had a meeting with a security representative scheduled for tomorrow. It was the first time I didn't feel guilty setting a boundary, only calmness and confidence. If my family does not respect my decision, I need actions, not words. Literal locks between me and those who have been taking advantage of me for years, taking advantage of my kindness. I sent a short message to Tessa. The engagement will not take place in my house. Please respect my decision. Then I turned off my phone and fell asleep for the first time in weeks. The new locks on the doors of the country house looked exactly like the old ones, but they felt completely different. I ran my hand over the cool metal, inserting the key that no one in my family had. The security system is installed, Ms. Phelps. Michael, the technician, was in his late 50s and sounded like he installed security systems for single women every day. You'll get a notification on your phone if anyone comes near the front door. Look, he showed me the app on my phone. The entrance, the backyard, the lake, the driveway. Everything is recorded in the cloud. I paid him, and when his van disappeared around the corner, a strange silence reigned inside. My house finally became truly mine. Secure, private. This week, I went to see Diane twice. Setting physical boundaries is a symbolic gesture, she said during our last session. But the most important thing is to set emotional boundaries. I'm not sure I know how to do that, I admitted. Try not to answer their calls right away. Don't agree to every request. Learn to say no without excuses. That evening, on the way back to the city, I made a list of rules for myself. Rules that I had never dared to set before. 1. Do not give money without return. 2. Do not take responsibility for other people's emotions. 3. Reply to messages when it is convenient for me, not immediately. 4. Not to make excuses for my decisions. 5. Spend time on myself and my interests. Of course, this was only the beginning, but for the first time in years, I felt like I was in control of my life. The next morning, I focused entirely on the bakery. There were more orders than usual. A new farmers market had invited us to supply bread for their opening, and a local magazine was planning an article about the city's artisan bakeries. Marin, there's a man looking for you. Leslie peeked into the back room where I was preparing the dough. Who? I brushed a strand of hair out of my face with the back of my hand, covered in flour. He wants to talk about the order. I'll be right there. I quickly wiped my hands, straightened my apron, and went into the main room. A tall man of about 35, with blonde hair pulled back into a sloppy bun, stood at the counter. He was wearing a simple white t-shirt and jeans, but something about his posture betrayed a professional. Hi! I stuck out my hand. Marin Phelps, Noah Gallagher. His handshake was firm and confident. I'm the chef at Table and Spoon. We're opening in 2 weeks, and I need the best bread in town. I liked his directness. How do you know I have it? Noah smiled, his eyes sparkling. I had your ciabatta at the food festival last month. It was... He paused, searching for a word. Transcendent. I laughed. Transcendent. Really? Absolutely. He nodded without a shadow of irony. Perfect texture, flavor, crust. I was a baker by training before I became a chef. I understand the difference between good and outstanding bread. We discussed the details of the order, types of bread, quantity, delivery schedule. Noah was specific and knew what he wanted, but at the same time left room for my suggestions. Why don't you try something from our assortment now? I suggested when we finished the formalities, to make sure it suits you. I'd love to. I picked up a tasting set for him, slices of different types of bread with olive oil and salt. Watching him taste each one, slowly and intently, I felt a strange satisfaction. You should put this one on the menu. I pointed to the rye bread with walnuts. It goes perfectly with cheeses. I trust your expertise. Noah looked at me with respect, without the condescending tone that men usually use. Why don't you come to the restaurant before we open? You could help me choose the bread for the different dishes. That sounds interesting. Then let's say, on Friday, 6 in the evening? The restaurant is still closed, so we can discuss it in peace. I caught myself thinking that his invitation sounded almost like a date. But I dismissed the thought. This is business, nothing more. Friday at 6. When Noah left, Leslie winked at me. Wow! Who knew bread could be so sexy? Stop it. I rolled my eyes, but couldn't help but smile. It's just business. Of course, of course, she laughed. That's why he was looking at you like the last piece of cake. I waved it off, but I felt warm inside. It had been a long time since anyone had looked at me so interested. In the afternoon, she appeared in the bakery's window, my mother. Even through the glass, I could see that she was furious. She stormed in like a fury, ignoring the surprised customers. You changed the locks? Her voice trembled with anger. I felt my insides tighten, but I forced myself to remain calm. Mom, let's talk about this in the back room. I nodded to the staff door. Don't tell me where to talk to my own daughter. She slammed her bag on the counter. Your Uncle Steve came to the country house with Aunt Doreen to get everything ready for the engagement party, and their key doesn't work. Do you have any idea how humiliating that is? Leslie gave me a worried look. I took a deep breath, remembering Diane's advice. Don't take responsibility for other people's emotions. I made it clear that I didn't want the engagement party to take place in my house. My voice was quiet but firm. And yes, I changed the locks. After everything we've done for you, my mother threw up her hands. You're ruining your sister's happiest day. She's in tears, Marin, in tears. The customers were already openly staring at us. I nodded again to the back door. Mom, please. Not here. To my surprise, she followed me. As soon as the door closed, she started again. You've always been a difficult child, Marin. But this is out of line. What are we going to tell the guests? That your sister isn't important enough to you? You can tell them the truth. I crossed my arms over my chest. That you planned to use my house without my permission, and I said no. No one does that to family. No one in our family drills holes in other people's walls or repaints other people's rooms. Mom froze. What? Tessa wrote to say she wants to drill holes in my walls for decorations and repaint the dining room. Without my permission, it's nothing. After the holiday, you can put it back the way it was. It's not a small thing, Mom. This is a complete disrespect for me and my property. She looked at me as if she were seeing me for the first time. What happened to you, Marin? Why have you suddenly become so selfish? The word hit me like a slap in the face. Selfish. I'm not being selfish, Mom. I've just finally started to respect myself. Great! She grabbed her bag. If your self-respect is more important than your sister's happiness, then so be it. But don't come apologizing later when you realize what you've done. I took a deep breath. I'm willing to help you financially if you find another place to get engaged. I can pay for the rent of a nice restaurant or banquet hall. You always thought money could solve any problem. She shook her head. But some things you can't buy, Maureen, like real family support. With that, she walked out, leaving me alone among the smell of fresh bread and the bitter taste of guilt. In the evening, my phone was bursting with messages. Tessa, Uncle Steve, Aunt Doreen, even my cousins were all expressing their outrage. I can't believe you're doing this to me, sister. I've always been there for you when you needed support. From Tessa, although I couldn't remember a single time when she actually supported me. Niece, your behavior is unacceptable. We are family, not strangers. From Aunt Doreen. Marin, you know your mother's blood pressure. Think about her health. From my father, who finally emerged from his wife's shadow. I read all the messages but didn't reply to any of them. Instead, I opened Instagram and came across Tessa's post. A photo of her crying face with the caption, When your own sister ruins the happiest day of your life, family is not always about blood. Sometimes real family is about those who are there for you in difficult times. Hundreds of sympathetic comments. Dozens of friends tagged me, asking what happened. I put the phone down, feeling a panic attack coming on. Could I really be wrong? Should I sacrifice my comfort for the sake of family peace? The phone rang. Noah Gallagher's number. Dash, dash, hello? My voice sounded weaker than I intended. Marin? It's Noah. I'm sorry to call you so late, but I just realized I forgot to check the delivery details. He stopped talking in mid-sentence. Is something wrong? Are you crying? I touched my cheek and realized that it was wet with tears. No, it's just a family matter. Do you want to talk about it? He didn't sound intrusive, just sincere sympathy. And suddenly, I told him everything. About the toast, about the engagement, about the castles. God, I'm sorry. I finally stopped. I don't even know why I'm telling you all this. Because sometimes it's easier to talk to someone who isn't biased, Noah replied. And if you're asking my opinion, you're absolutely right. Really? Of course. It's your house, your rules. If they can't respect your boundaries, that's their problem, not yours. His words were simple, but they were like a balm to my wounded soul. Thank you, I said quietly. Most people think that you have to put up with your family no matter what. That's nonsense, Noah said firmly. Relationships should be mutually respectful, whether they are family or not. After talking to Noah, I felt stronger. The next day, I got in touch with Rachel and a few other friends I had neglected in recent years due to my constant family commitments. You finally got out of the family's thrall? Rachel joked when we met for coffee. I can't believe you actually have time for friends. I've been rethinking a lot of things lately, I said. I can tell, she looked at me carefully. You look lighter, like you've taken off a heavy backpack. I have. I told her about the locks and my family's reaction. Rachel listened, nodding. Finally, she said when I was done. I've been waiting for years for you to finally put them back in place. And now what? Now you live your life, Marin. Without the eternal guilt and the responsibility to answer for everyone. Weeks passed. I focused on the bakery, therapy, and new friendships. Noah and I started dating, first under the pretext of cooperating on bread deliveries, then just as, well, let's call it dating. He wasn't demanding, he wasn't pressuring, he was just there for me, and he made me feel really understood. My relationship with my family remained tense. My mom called occasionally, but the conversations were cold and formal. Tessa had an engagement party at a rented restaurant, without my financial help, which she proudly rejected, and I was not invited. Does this upset you? Noah asked one night when we were having dinner at his apartment. A little, I admitted, but mostly I feel relieved. I feel like I can finally breathe. I see. He poured us more wine. You know, I've been meaning to ask you for a while. What about that weekend you promised to show me? What weekend? Your country house. You said there's a beautiful lake there. The perfect place to check out my new outdoor cookbook. I froze, glass in hand. My country house was always a place where I invited my family. A place where I felt like a hostess, but not a real owner. I had never brought friends or anyone special there before. I'd love to, I said, feeling warmth spreading inside me. This weekend? On Saturday morning, Noah and I loaded up his car with groceries and headed out of town. It was a perfect day, warm sunshine, gentle breeze, blue sky. I opened the door of my house, and for the first time in a long time, I didn't expect to see my relatives' things scattered around or traces of their presence. Wow, Noah whistled, looking around the spacious living room. This place is amazing. Thank you, I smiled, feeling really proud. It was my dream. And you made it happen. It's amazing, Noah walked over to the panoramic windows that overlooked the lake. My God, what a view! Do you want to walk to the water before dinner? Sure. We went out onto the terrace and walked down the path to the lake. Noah took my hand, and it felt so natural, as if we'd done it thousands of times. You know, he said as we stood on a small platform, looking out over the calm water. I understand why you're so protective of this place. It's special. Yes. I squeezed his hand. And now it's finally all mine. No obligations. No feeling that I have to share it with everyone. But you shared it with me. He turned to me, his eyes glowing with warmth. That's different, I smiled. It's my choice. My gift, not my duty. He leaned down and kissed me lightly. For the first time in years, I felt like I was exactly where I was supposed to be, with someone who saw me for who I really was. Not the foolproof Marin, not the fool with money, but just me, with my strengths and weaknesses, dreams and fears. That evening, Noah cooked dinner on the terrace. We ate under the starry sky, talking about everything. No family drama, no attempts to impress, just two people enjoying each other's company. To a new beginning? Noah raised his glass. To new rules. I touched my glass to his. This toast sounded completely different from the one I had overheard at my mother's birthday party. It was sincere, warm, and full of hope. And for the first time, I believed that I deserved something better than being just a stupid relative with money. 3 months? 12 weeks? 84 days. That's how long it's been since I changed the locks on my house and in my life. Autumn has quietly turned into winter, bringing with it not only cold, but also an inner peace that I was unaccustomed to. Tessa's engagement took place on the first Saturday of December at the Vintage Restaurant, one of the most expensive in the city. I learned about it not from my family, but from mutual friends who wondered why I wasn't attending such an important event. You didn't get an invitation? Leslie asked as we were closing the bakery. It's your sister. I shrugged, trying not to show how much it really hurt me. Family matters are complicated. Although I wasn't invited, I sent a gift anyway, a rare set of antique silver candlesticks that Tessa had seen in a store a long time ago, but thought were too expensive. I attached a short note to them. Congratulations on your engagement. I wish you happiness. Marine. I did not receive a response, but the delivery confirmed that the gift had been picked up. Meanwhile, my life moved forward. Domashny Boroshno flourished. We opened a second bakery in the business district of the city, and the queues there were even longer than in the first one. Therapy with Diana helped me understand many things about myself. Why I was always trying to please everyone, why I was afraid to set boundaries, why I was so desperate for approval that I never received. And of course, there was Noah. Our relationship developed slowly but surely. Table and Spoon opened and became instantly popular, partly because of my bread, as Noah insisted. We saw each other almost every day, either during deliveries to the restaurant or after work. On weekends, we often went to my country house, which was gradually filled with new, happy memories. One Tuesday, when I was closing the bakery, my phone rang. It was my father's number. We hadn't spoken since he sent me a message about my mother's blood pressure. Dad? I answered, not knowing what to expect. Marin? He sounded tired. How are you? Fine. And you? Fine. He was silent. Listen, I'd like to meet you, to talk. It's important. I hesitated. The last family conversation had turned into accusations and manipulations. I'm not sure that's a good idea. Please, Marin. I want to talk to you alone, without your mom. Just father and daughter. Something in his voice, tiredness or maybe sincerity, made me agree. Okay. Tomorrow at 12 at the coffee shop near my bakery? Thank you. I'll be there. I told Noah about my father's call when we ate dinner at his apartment that night. What do you think he wants? Noah asked, placing a plate of pasta in front of me. Maybe another attempt to convince me to make peace with my family. I paused. No? At least not on their terms. Noah squeezed my hand. I'm proud of you. You know that? I smiled. How strange it was to hear such words from someone who didn't ask for the impossible in return. The next day, I arrived at the coffee shop early and chose a table in the corner. My father showed up at 12 o'clock, sharp, tall, with gray hair that I hadn't noticed before. "Thank you for coming," he said, sitting down across from me. "What did you want to discuss?" I decided not to waste time with small talk. I wanted to apologize, Marin. For everything. For what? I asked cautiously. For not protecting you. For allowing your mother to favor Tessie. For not appreciating your efforts. He looked down at his hands, as if he didn't dare to meet my eyes. "I always knew you were exceptional, but it was easier to just go with the flow." I sat there in silence, not knowing what to say. "That toast about stupid relatives with money," he continued, "it was terrible." And I was sitting there laughing with everyone else, even though I felt ashamed inside. "Why didn't you stop it?" I asked quietly. "Because I'm a weak person, Marin." He finally looked at me. "Your mother is a strong person, and I just followed her." "That's no excuse, Dad." "I know. It's not an excuse." He shook his head. "It's just an explanation. An explanation, not an excuse." We were silent while the waitress brought our order. When she left, my father spoke again. "I want you to know something about your mother. It doesn't excuse her behavior, but maybe it will help you understand." "I'm listening." Beverly grew up with a mother who criticized her constantly. Nothing was good enough, ever. Her older brother was the favorite, and she was the one who always got the leftover attention. Her father looked out the window, remembering. When we got married, she swore she'd be a better mother than her own. But instead, she just repeated the same pattern, only reversing the roles. "I didn't know that," I admitted. "She never talked about her childhood." "It's too painful," he sighed. When Tessa was born, Beverly saw her as a second chance, an opportunity to be the mother to her youngest daughter that she never had. At my expense. Yes. And I didn't stop it, even though I saw it coming. He shook his head. "I failed you, Marin, and I'm so sorry for that." I felt something change inside me. Not forgiveness, not yet, but perhaps the beginning of understanding. "What now?" I asked. It's up to you," my father answered. "I'm not asking you to return to your family right away or to forget everything that happened. Just, maybe leave the door a little open, for those of us who are ready to change." I nodded. "I'll think about it." When we said goodbye, my father gave me an awkward hug, something he hadn't done in years. "I'm proud of you, Marin," he said quietly. A week after my meeting with my father, I received an envelope with no return address. Inside was a postcard with a picture of the Eiffel Tower. Tessa's handwriting. "Marin, thank you for the candlesticks. They are perfect. I know that there are many unspoken things between us. Maybe someday we can talk about it. Tessa." Not an apology, not an admission of guilt, but a small step towards us. I put the card in my drawer, not sure what to do with it. My 36th birthday was approaching. I never really celebrated this day, usually working as usual. But this year, Noah insisted that we should celebrate it. "You deserve a holiday," he said. On my birthday, I worked until noon, and then Noah picked me up and drove me to the country house. "Close your eyes," he asked as we drove up. I obeyed, feeling the excitement of a child. When the car stopped and Noah helped me out, he whispered, "You can look now." I opened my eyes and froze. The terrace of my house was decorated with garlands of lights and flowers. Sitting around the big table were Rachel, Leslie, and her husband, a few friends from the baking community, my former neighbor Owen, and a few other people I truly loved and respected. "Happy birthday!" they shouted in a chorus. Tears came to my eyes. It was the first real celebration in this house. Not for show, not for anyone's benefit, but just for me, with people who really appreciated me. The evening was wonderful. We ate the food Noah had prepared, drank wine, laughed, and talked. No tension, no feeling that I owed anyone anything. When I went home for a minute, my phone lit up with a message. It was from my mom. Marin, happy birthday. I know I don't deserve your forgiveness, but I want you to know that I'm working on myself. I started seeing a therapist, as you once advised. He is helping me realize how much pain I have caused you with my behavior. I respect your desire to keep your distance, and I don't expect an immediate reconciliation. Just know that when and if you're ready, I'm trying to be ready too. Love, Mom. I read the message twice, not believing my eyes. Mom is seeing a therapist, admitting her mistakes. It was so unlike her that I almost doubted if the message was really from her. I didn't answer right away. I turned to my guests, to the people who had become my chosen family. Noah put his arm around my shoulders. Are you okay? Yes, I smiled. I'm better than okay. Later, when the guests had left and Noah and I were alone, sitting on the terrace under the starry sky, I showed him my mother's message. What do you think? He asked after reading it. I don't know, I answered honestly. Part of me wants to believe that she is really changing. Another part of me is afraid of another disappointment. You don't have to decide now, he took my hand. You can do it on your own terms, in your own time. That's a new concept for me, I laughed. My time. But it's the right one. We sat in silence, looking at the lake shimmering in the moonlight. I remembered how I used to be afraid of loneliness more than anything, how I desperately held on to toxic relationships just to avoid being alone. And here I am, calm and happy, with a man who accepts me for who I am. Do you ever think, I asked, how things can change in a few months? All the time. Noah kissed my hand. 6 months ago, I didn't know you existed. And now, I can't imagine life without you. I leaned against him, feeling truly at peace. The next morning, while Noah was still sleeping, I went out to the terrace with a cup of coffee. Looking at the sunrise over the lake, I took out my phone and wrote a short message to my mom. Thank you for the congratulations. Maybe we could meet for coffee one day. Not now, but someday. I pressed send, feeling no fear, no guilt, no excessive expectations. Just a calm realization that I now have the power to choose who I let into my life and on what terms. I am no longer that girl who was desperate for approval, not the woman who tried to buy her family's love. I am Marin Phelps, and I have finally started to live my own life.